created the new Department of Government Efficiency, which you may have heard about, DOGE, which is now waging war on government waste, fraud, and abuse. And we've begun the largest deregulation of industries and other things. It's proper deregulation that has ever done. I lead the way on my first 4 years. We did more deregulation than any other president in history. And I brought a little list along that I thought I'd just read some of the places when you mentioned DOGE, some of the places that this money has gone. And these are the ones that I feel I could read. There are some that are so nasty and dirty and horrible that I don't want to really read them because I assume they have television on. I have guarantee they do. I let the press in today because we have nothing to hide, right? It's much better. They said, do you want to let the press in? I said, why not? You think Biden would do that? I don't think so. $520 million was given for a consultant to do ESG, that's environmental, social, and governance investments in Africa. $520 million, $25 million to promote biodiversity, conservation, and social responsibility behavior in the country of Colombia. $25 million, $40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. They have no place in particular they were thinking of. There is no location. The money was sent out, but they have no idea where it's going. $42 million for social and behavior changes in Uganda, and $10 million for Mozambique medical male circumcision. People that want to be or have to be circumcised in Mozambique. $14 million for improving public procurement in Serbia. $486 million to a consortium for elections and political process strengthening, which $22 million was for inclusive participatory political process in Moldova. And $21 million going to my friend, Prime Minister Modi in India, for voter turnout. We're giving $21 million for voter turnout in India. What about us? I want voter turnout too, Governor. $29 million to strengthen the political landscape in Bangladesh. Went to a firm that nobody ever heard of. Got $29 million. They got a check. Can you imagine you have a little firm, you get 10,000 here, 10,000 there. And then we get $29 million from the United States government. There are 2 people working in that firm. 2 people. I think they're very happy. They're very rich. They'll be on the cover of a very good business magazine pretty soon for being great scammers. $20 million for fiscal federalism, and $19 million for biodiversity in Nepal, and $47 million also for improving learning outcomes in Asia. Asia got a lot of money. $50 million plus another $50 million for condoms for Hamas. They gave $50 million, and it worked out so well, they gave another $50 million a little bit later. Condoms, $100 million for Hamas. And we're also uncovering outrageous incompetence and fraud in the Social Security, and I read this last night, so Governor, you're going to be bored hearing this, but you know, you never get bored because it's not possible to even believe it. So if you live 100 years, it's a long time, but let's assume that they had millions and millions of people living because they have like 10 million people in the Social Security living, but let's go over 100. So now you're more than 100 years old. We have 4.7 million Social Security numbers, people from the age of 100 to 109. So if you're 100 to 109, we have 4.7 million people on our Social Security rolls, right? That's a lot of people. I knew one guy was 100. The great Lenny Litwin, he was a builder in Manhattan. He lived to 103. You knew him. He was one of the greatest builders. He was so happy. The reason he lived, he loved building. He'd build a building a year, right? Never had a problem. You knew Lenny Litwin, I would think, Governor, right? He was a great guy and got along with everybody. He got along with Democrats, Republicans. Everybody loved Lenny. When he died, it was a bad day for New York, I'll tell you. He was a great guy. But he lived to 103, 104 because he just loved his business. He was designing a new building at 103, and that was the end of it. He didn't quite get the design finished. But You had 3.6 million people aged 110, substantially older than good old Lenny. From 110 to 119, you have 3.6. These are the people on the rolls. Now we're looking to see whether or not they've been paid, because if they've been paid, then you're just using those numbers to take out the money, all the money that's paid to those people. 3.47 million people from the age of 120 to 129. 3.9 million people aged 130 to 139. 3.5 million people aged 140 years old to 149 years old. I think this is the case for Pam. I think I might give you this, Pam, just you can have it. In fact, I will. 1.3 million from age 150. There's 1.3 million people, they're saying, are alive and receiving Social Security. Now, that's the only thing we're checking. Are they receiving it? Because if they're receiving it, that makes it much worse. If they're not receiving it, that just makes it incompetent. They shouldn't be on the rolls. And the only thing good about this is that when we take all these people off the rolls, and we have tremendous fraud underneath with people that are 80 and 60 and 50 and everything else, but this is really incredible. 1.3 million from 150 to 159, and over 130,000 people are on the rolls of Social Security over the age of 160 years old, including 1,039 people between the ages of 220 and 229. So we have, think of that, we have 1,039 people who are 220 years old to 229. We have one person at 240 years old, and here's the beauty of them all. We have one person at 360, which is strange because the country is 250. So it's been there 110 years older than the country. Here, Pam, you better take a look at this. That's much better for you than for me. Now the question is, are they getting paid? Because somebody maybe is getting paid. Yeah, I have a feeling you were. I said, what a convenient thing. This is so nice. We created this department, DOGE, and the kind of numbers are incredible. It could be $500 billion, but it could be $1 trillion. It could be even $1.5 trillion. We're going to find out. I mean, I'm actually going with Elon, and Elon is doing a really good job. And I said, who are these people that travel you? We call them the Dogers. And I said, what are they? He said, they're generally young people with extremely high IQs who are very good with computers, because you have to be good with computers. So when one of these scammers talks and tries to tell them why it's perfect, they said, no, it doesn't work that way. You know, it's very hard to talk them out of something when they have you. But we're actually going to Fort Knox, because I want to see, do we have the gold? Do we still have whatever it is, tons of gold? I hope we do. Wouldn't that be disappointing? Fort Knox, you grow up hearing about Fort Knox, you can't get in, you can't even see it, nobody sees it. You go there and the place is dry. Would that be terrible? There's another one. Maybe you should go with us to that one. But we're going to go in there pretty soon. They're going to open the doors to Fort Knox. If any governor would like to go with us, well, good. You want to go with us on that one, Ron? That could be good. Could be interesting. Can you imagine if we open it up and there's no gold? Well, I think there will. One other thing, I just before we leave, I think you should do this. For my safety and security and for the good of our nation, you should do it anyway, regardless, even if it costs 10 times more. But it actually costs you just a tiny fraction. If you went to paper ballots and you're voting, and I would hope that every Republican would, so it costs exactly 8% of what the machines cost. These machines, they got something going. They get business. It's amazing. So paper ballots, and paper is very sophisticated today. It's called watermark. It's impossible to copy, impossible to cheat. It's actually hard to believe that a piece of paper is highly sophisticated. But it's watermark, and it's it's amazing, actually, when you see it. You can't cheat. But if you went to paper ballots and same-day voting, and if you went to voter ID, and also one other thing, you want a proof of citizenship, those four things, proof of citizenship, voter ID, paper ballots, one-day voting. And if you went to two-day voting or three-day voting, but some of these states, you had 64 days. You know, California just finished up just a short while ago. They were voting a week and a half ago. They tried to finish him up. And other states, too. They were weeks after the election. I mean, if that were a close election, you'd have to wait for weeks and weeks and weeks. You got finished fast, Brian. Thank you for your help. We did very well in Georgia. That was very nice. But some of these states, if you had a close election, you wouldn't know who won. And then, you know, once that happens, then you really never know who won. But you would save tens of millions of dollars, forgetting about right, wrong, and security, safety, our country, our Constitution, and all of these. Number one, you'd have a much safer election. Number two, everybody, you'd know the results of your election by 10 o'clock. Everybody, it's a beautiful system. It's boxes of 5,000, boom, boom. And you can go and examine each box. It's so simple and so good. I did ask Elon, because he knows more about computers than anybody I know. I said, what do you think of the voting system? He said, computers are not meant for voting. It's just not a good, it's too many transactions taking place too quickly. It's just not, he said, honestly, and I've gone to the best people, the smartest computer minds from MIT, from others. My uncle was a professor for 41 years at MIT. And a brilliant guy, and I got to know a lot of the people up there. And they will tell you that the most secure way that you can secure the election, and probably the fastest way, because there can be very little hanky-panky, is paper ballots. Can you believe it? So I hope, Sarah, that certainly the Republican governors, but if you want to save a lot of money, you go to paper ballots. It'll cost you 8% of what the costs are now. And that's based on a good deal for machines. And then when you go through the days and weeks and months of waiting, France had mail-in ballots. Anytime you have mail-in ballots, you're going to have fraud, without question. And France had it, and they went back to paper ballots. And I saw their election, and their election was over at 9 o'clock, and their numbers came in at 10:05. And there were no complaints. There was no, they had a winner, they had a loser, 39 million votes, and it was done. We're one of the only people that has now mail-in voting, one of the only countries that has mail-in voting. Remember Jimmy Carter when he did a commission, and I think they had Scoop Jackson, they had some, at the time, big senators, and their conclusion was, if you have mail-in voting, you're going to have massive fraud. And we had it in New York with the congressional race. Remember the congressional race? It took them forever like 6 months later, they declared, who was it, Jerry Nadler or somebody? They declared him the winner, 6 months later. But it was somebody. Oh, no, it was the woman, the congressman. I won't mention her name. But she won. But she didn't win, and it was really very sad to see that whole thing. Democrat, that was a Democrat and a Democrat. That was a primary, but they had the mail-in voting. It's just a disaster. So it's very, very expensive. If you want to save money, if you really believe that the computers work, which they don't, but if you want to save a lot of money, all you have to do is go to paper ballots, and you'll be cutting it down by millions and millions of dollars. So America will take off like a rocket ship. You're going to